Hey guys, Arm&Gun here tonight with the Primary Weapon Systems Mk107 Mod2, dubbed the Diablo. And that's a super fitting name for this really cool, feisty 7.75-inch AR15 chambered in 5.56 or 7.62x39. There's a version, the Mk109, chambered in 300 blackout, and a few other versions as well. So we're gonna go in some depth in this thing today. I'm gonna teach you all about this thing. We're gonna go stock to muzzle, and we'll give you a lot of cool information on the features because this is not your everyday AR-15. This is actually basically an AK-47 under the hood. I shouldn't say basically, because it's an AK-47 long stroke gas system that's been tastefully set into an AR-15 frame. And it's been done marvelously well. It's a lightweight system as well. They've done some incredible things with this forged receiver, adjustable gas block. They've really done some cool things up front here that have allowed them to keep things dialed back on the rest of the gun and keep that weight down. So again, the founder and primary innovator, Dean Sylvester, he's done some really cool things. I caught a super cool, very knowledgeable Q&A video that he did, and then backed that up by reaching out to Brittany to PWS, and she answered a lot of great questions for me. Bless her heart, on Friday night. I feel bad for reaching out on a Friday night, end of the workday, but she got back to me and we were talking shop until like 10 o'clock at night. So you gotta respect someone's passion about their job when they're willing to do that with some random YouTuber that's asking really like specific and probably somewhat dry, just businessy questions. But she humored me. I really appreciated that, and I'm gonna include some of that content towards the end. We're gonna do some history on the company and give you some origins on the Diablo and just where this system has come from and how it's come to be. And but we're gonna focus on the gun itself. And I think the best way to kick this thing off is to start with the naming designation, because Primary Weapon Systems, they've got a very organized naming convention, but it is a bit of a mouthful, and they're using marks and mods and a bunch of numbers, and I mean, I didn't even understand it myself until I spent a bit of time on their website and definitely going through it. So I'm going to explain that in as few words as I can, just to make it clear. We're going to bring in the bonus gun today. Is actually, well, bust it out now. The HK416, a 14.5-inch upper. We're going to do some compare and contrast because in that Q&A, Dean Sylvester referenced some really cool things that the 416 did in terms of their gas system, their piston system. They use a short stroke. And again, he had all the respect in the world for HK and the 416, but they learned from some of the things, some of the design cues that these guys did, and some things they didn't do that allowed them, the primary weapon systems, to make this system work so well. So we'll get into that again as kind of a neat function as we go. But first off, let's jump into these names, and then we're going to dive into the gun itself. So, Mk107 Mod2. So first, let's start with the Mk1, because the numbers aren't all just together. Mk1 comes first. So you got your Mk1, which is going to be your traditional, basically your AR-15 calibers that PWS makes, because they make a mil-spec receiver, upper and lower, and they're chambered in 223/556, so they're 223 Wylde, which is what this barrel is chambered in. Then we've got 7.62x39 and 300 blackout. So those are going to be primarily what they've got their guns done in. They've done some like 6.8 SPC barrels in the past, though super limited. And those are basically what you're going to find the Mk1s in. If you go to Mk2, that's going to be your AR-10 platform. So you're going to have 308 and 6.5 Creedmoor. Basically, that's it. And if you got, so if that's Mk1, that's Mk2. The next two numbers, really simple. That corresponds to barrel length. So 07, that's your 7.75-inch. That's the Diablo. Then there's the 109. That's going to be chambered in your 300 blackout. It's a 9-inch. Next one is a Mk111. These are super popular. And it's actually an 11.85-inch barrel, which is kind of close. Right in there up in 12 inches. I really want to track down one of those uppers now because I'm pretty curious. I think 12.5 is like the sweet spot for the 5.56 cartridge, and I really want to. There's not a lot of guys that make 12 or 12.5 barrels, so I'm kind of excited these guys are just getting up in there on that 12. They also do it because that's 30 centimeters, and I guess that allows you to export to a lot more European countries like Italy, for example. Then the 114 is 14, 116 is 16, so that's how the naming convention works they're out. And then you got the mods, okay? So Mod O, Mod 1, Mod 2. Mod O, don't need to worry about, that's their older system. Those are easily identified by having a quad rail. Mod 1 and Mod 2, I'm gonna just say it pretty simply here. Mod 1 is kind of just like Mod 2 but without the fancy, you know, bells and whistles. Mod 2 is going to be characterized by this lightweight receiver, these cuts in here, this new rail system that's actually got this really cool dual interface. You see Keymod here. They also do M-Lock, which I kind of wish I had. And then there's something funky going on up here, and we'll get into that as we jump into the gun here, which, you know what, let's just jump in right now. So, we're going to ignore some of these other things that I put on here, like the stock, which is actually an HK416 stock, because I do this firearm series now. It's kind of a lighter, kind of fun thing. I called the last one Pimp My Gun, which is really kind of uncharacteristic of, if you know me personally, I don't really use that type of language. But I was calling them accessorizing videos and upgrading videos, and I just felt like it didn't have that zing or that panache. Like it wasn't quite carrying what I was trying to get at with the video, which again, is just to be a fun video that just like deals with upgrading and kind of tweaking out like your rifle, kind of to suit your preferences. And you know what? Exhibit did all the hard work developing the marketing or the kind of the buzz behind that, you know, Pimp My Ride, that branding behind that phrase. So we do the Pimp My Gun series now, and as conflicted as I feel about it, that will be the name until something else comes along. But in that series, which again you see the video right up here, that's where I threw on the Battle Arm Safety Selector, Enhanced Mag Release. I guess I should clear this thing because I've already been handling it quite a bit. We are good to go there. I threw on a different stock, which I swapped out because my Knights was missing it. I threw a Radian Raptor charging handle on there, though these come typically from the factory with Radians. And, you know, Geisley Maritime Bolt Catch. Just a bunch of extra things that I didn't need to do. But I'm really digging this weapon system, or this firearm system, and or platform rather, and I had some spare parts kicking around. I had to do it. So, and I have not looked back. All these are really nice appointments, and I really enjoy them, and that's that. But we're not going to focus on those today. I had a whole separate video for that. We're going to focus today is the features of the firearm itself, which are some really cool things that PWS does. And we're going to start again at the stock, or at least in this case, the buffer tube or the receiver extension, the proper name, and the castle nut end plate, because this is all proprietary PWS, and it is so cool. Look at this fluted buffer system. You can buy this stuff separate. It's just upgrades for your rifle yourself, which is really nice. PWS does a lot of OEM upgrades like that. So you can see they've actually, this is a lightweight, it's an enhanced buffer tube. They've milled out an extra 1 ounce out of this mil spec buffer tube, which typically is a part that people just overlook. They forget about, and they just, you know, it is what it is. But no, they dialed in and they dug out. Look at this, even the back. Look at that attention to detail back there. This is just such an attractive buffer tube. I'm kind of just like geeking out over this thing. And then we got our end plate, which has a QD insert, and this cool ratcheting mechanism, so you never have to stake again. You builders out there that want to like be able to have the freedom and flexibility to readily swap out your buffer tube if you want, well, now you can without, you know, friggin' mashing metal in there just to mash it out when you want to change something. And it's just, for me, I mean, I understand the reason behind staking stuff. Like, obviously, it's just a set it, forget it, bomb-proof, rock-solid way of doing it. But not all of us like doing that. And PWS, thank you, because this just does it for me. I just friggin' love this. So you can just click this on as tight as you want. They say typically you get it hand tight, and then you crank it another like 2 clicks, and then it's perfect. And they do warn you not to over-tighten because you can damage threads, because this does lock on pretty darn tight. Ahead of that, we got to get our charging handle, and we got a nice Raptor. Typically, these come outfitted with Raptors from the factory, so that's all fine and dandy. We're gonna jump into the grip. Actually, the grip, they just put like BCM, in fact, like aftermarket stuff on it. This one's got a SIG grip. I think you typically use BCM. I'm gonna pop this thing off really quickly. This is just a quick excerpt taken out of, or some B-roll footage while I was swapping out stuff in the Pimp My Gun series video. But they even do lightning cuts under here, so let's just look at that real swift. Just really quickly here, I have this the grip off. This lower, there are so many lightning cuts in this lower. They've even milled out these spaces underneath the grip. Really cool. Really cool. And there aren't both springs here. One spring is retained differently for the takedown pin. Just the selector spring is in there. And then something else really cool is this back here. We have this threaded insert that has a plunger built into it. This little white thing here, that's a plunger. I can push down on it. And the idea behind that is to exert pressure on the upper receiver so that you get a really tight fit between the upper and the lower. So you can adjust that, you can dial that in. So what I did is I put my upper on my lower, got it assembled, dialed it in until I had no more flex. Really cool. Really cool, guys. So again, I look at a lot of receivers, a lot of lightweight receivers, and there aren't many that go to the depths of milling even out that. That's pretty cool. Another cool little plunger system, I like that as well. Then we got our battle arms safety. Typically these come with, I think, a 90-degree selector. I don't think it's anything significant. I think it's just a traditional parts kit type build. I'm not sure. They could honestly go to rating as well. They're using the charging handle, so there's no reason they couldn't go to a Raptor, or sorry, a Talon selector if they wanted to. Bolt catch, I think, is just something in-house. It's kind of nice. It fits in there really flush, but I like a little more space, a little more meat on my catch and release, so I jumped up into that Geisley. The Ambi mag release is really nice. It's how it's fenced into this this forged lower receiver. I'll talk about that in a second, but I really like that. It's a very characteristic of the Knights Armament Co. lower and the way their Ambi mag release works, and that's really, really nice. Again, you typically just have a standard AR mag release on this side, and then up here, an Ambi bolt release, which is, again, a really nice feature. I would say this is a 95% Ambi gun, because the only thing it's missing is that Ambi bolt catch. Otherwise, for controls, your ejection port cover is just standard. This is one other thing I was debating grabbing an upgrade for. I'd probably just go polymer or just a flat aluminum. It just does a nice little enhancement there, because all these lines, I think they kind of detract a little bit from the beautiful lines that they put in their forged receiver sets. So again, this is really cool. This is a lightweight setup, and they've actually gone without the forward assist, and that can be a controversial move. But again, having heard a lot of what Dean Sylvester had to say about the system in general and what they do for reliability, and the fact that themselves and their customers were running thousands of rounds through their old guns that I think had the forward assist, they did. Those guns, no one needed to use the forward assist. Again, this long stroke action system, it stays cleaner, and it's just they weren't using it. So they thought, well, they're going to all this effort to do this lightweight system anyways. Why leave that forward assist there? And I have to go with Dean Sylvester. I think they made the right call. I mean, I know it's controversial. Some guys love him. I think this worked out just fine. So that's that. But this receiver set in general it's actually kind of the best of both worlds. For whatever reason, PWS decided that they were going to get into this. They were going to get into this the right way from the start. They weren't going to do just a billet, because usually that's the drawback when you go with a forging. Not a lot of companies do forging, so generally you're pretty limited in the scope of what you get for your magwell. You're pretty limited in a lot of cases. But they did this custom forging, this design, that allowed them to go with a nice, hugely flared magwell, integrated trigger guard, the Ambi bolt release, all these lightning cuts. Again, like they did a stylized, well thought out receiver design, and they got that as a forging made. And forging, if you don't know the difference between billet and forging, billet usually gives you the flexibility because you just start off with a raw chunk of aluminum and you just do all the work, right? So it's more machine time. So forging is a little more efficient, but it's also stronger. So that's kind of cool as well. And this is done with T6 7075 aluminum. So it's basically about the best you can do with standard materials. This is all hard coat anodized, and I believe they use their life coating on any surface that sees movement, which we'll get into in a second here. But next up, we got the rail, or the Handguard, and this Handguard is another proprietary thing that PWS has come from. I believe it's free floated. It's a gorgeous design for how well they incorporate a piston gun. Like it's really hard to tell this is a piston over a DI because you don't have all that vertical height. Like compare and contrast that with the 416, which I love this thing, but you've got some chonk here. You've got some vertical height overboard in this thing, right? You've got that extra, I don't know, 3/8 or so of an inch that this thing is built up to accommodate that piston system and that pusher rod. This is all just tucked in, super nice, and it's $1 million. And without being $1 million, these are actually really inexpensive handguards to buy aftermarket. It is a 6061 extrusion, which is milled out, and you can actually see a little bit of difference between the anodize on the 6061 versus 7075. But usually that's kind of common, is that those don't always anodize quite the same. Nonetheless, very hard to tell the difference, and it does look great. And apart from this being Keymod, I wish it was M-Lock. They do offer M-Lock, but this cool integrated Picatinny rail up here. This is something else, and I'm currently trying to decide which one of these lights I liked better. The Inforce I had on here, and it's nice and slick. I love the streamlined design. It's really nice to get your thumb up there and just depress it and press it on, but honestly, over here, the Olight just chucks a ton more light. It definitely has the power, and I wouldn't normally consider it, because this is more of the PL2 Valkyrie. This is like a pistol light, right? You put this on a rail underneath on your frame of your pistol. But because this 1913 interface here, it's so low profile, because they've gone with the slimline handguard as it is, with just the pick rail or Keymod, and then they've integrated somehow the pick rail in there, 1913 rail in there. That's really slick, really clever. It's a great design, and it allows you to get really nice and tight and flush, even with this Olight. And I'm kind of digging it. I'm kind of thinking that might be the way I go on this one. That just looks great on there. So I'm really kind of digging that. So I got a really cool system. I got them the 3, 9, and 6 o'clock positions there. That's called Pick Lock or Pick Mod. It's meant to be the Picatinny rail interface with the Keymod or M-Lock. So it's just another cool innovation by PWS. Finally, up front here, we've got, again, this is the ratcheting design that I think bore the inspiration for the Castle Nut. But this is a dual purpose. It's a compensator. Don't worry, I'm not pointing the gun at myself. Just this thing. Actually, I'm going to pop this light off here so I can shine it down so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So, there, we got, there we go. Bumping my camera, doing all sorts of crazy stuff here. But it's a linear compensator, and it's designed to keep that concussion inside this thing. So it's kind of like a little bit of a blast deflector as well. And then you've got this flash hiding tines in front of that to help control some of the crazy flashes this thing has. And it ratchets on, which is really cool as well. And this device in general also doesn't need to be timed. It's kind of just like, you put it on, set it, forget it, don't worry about it. So all in all, a pretty neat system. So the two things left to talk about that are pretty big things are the barrel and the gas block. So the barrel, PWS starts off with a barrel blank. It's 41V50 steel, which is a fantastic mil-spec grade steel, great stuff. It's well known for being very, very robust. And they do in-house, so basically they take that barrel blank and they do everything else required to that barrel to get it in the gun running fine. So they do that all in-house, which is pretty impressive. They do button rifling, and they do 1-in-8 twist in all their 223 Wylde guns. And that's a bit of a difference from what a lot of the industry does. A lot of the industry has gone with a 1-in-7. And again, I know why they did this, and I'm going to tell you why Dean Sylvester's logic was behind that choice, and then I'll tell you what I think about it, if I agree with that or not. So the reason a lot of upper-end AR manufacturers are going with a 1-in-7-inch twist barrel is because the military has a round that loves that twist rate. It's the 77 grain OTM, and while 77 grains, you have to keep in mind, that's on the upper end of heavy bullets for this cartridge. This cartridge is primarily seen with 55 grain and 62 grain projectiles. So you're talking about 77 versus 55, you're talking like 20, 30, 40% of an increase. And while a 1-in-7-inch rate is optimal for that 77, you can actually overstabilize the lighter projectiles. So 1-in-8 is just backing that off a little bit. And in Dean's experience and what his customers were using his guns for, he found that 90% or at least a very high percentage of the rounds that guys are using on these things for is training ammunition and plinking ammunition that's 55, 62. And Dean didn't want to sacrifice the effectiveness of those rounds in favor of the 77, which the guns just don't see that much of. Again, it's more expensive ammunition. Yes, the military uses it for certain applications, but when you're at the range, you're not just going to do mag dumps with 77 OTMs. Like, the efficiency is not there. Like if you're trying to maximize the bang for your buck, like literally, you're going to want to take the economical route and go with the more common stuff like the 55s and the 62s. And Dean recognized that, tailored his guns towards that, and I have to think like that makes sense because this gun right here, this thing isn't thriving off a 77. If I want to run heavyweight projectiles out of this thing, I'm going to go to 300 Blackout Supers, and I'm going to run this with the 109 with a 9-inch barrel, and that's how this thing's going to work. So yes, I agree. I think Dean made a good call there, and I'm with him for it. Next up, and possibly the most important for this entire system, and this is also where I'm going to draw on some cues from the 416, is the adjustable gas regulator gas block. So it's a 3-position, but the biggest thing that Dean noted with it that makes this system run so well and allows him to go so lightweight with it is the attention they paid to the dwell time and the modifications they did to the gas block to increase said dwell time, or the volume ahead of the gas piston. So this is cool. This is a bit nerdy, so feel free to skip forward this if you're not interested, but I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here, and because I was geeking out over it, I think it's really cool how some of this stuff works. So this is where they looked at the 416 originally, in the short stroke piston, and HK, so the 14.5 didn't have all the same problems that the 10.4 did, because the 10.4 was basically the same gun, but the barrel was boom chopped here. So you're right here, and your gas block is right here. So you've got like basically no dwell time. The dwell time is basically the length of barrel that the bullet passes through after it's past the gas port, and gas excess pressure and stuff is being bled off behind that bullet to cycle the action. So HK didn't have much room, and instead of trying to increase that volume so they could get more pressure back there to run the action, they just didn't have very much. So they drilled a big hole, and then it was hard because then the original guns were known for being overgassed as a result. They just drilled a really big gas hole, and that led to some other problems. Then they did that to try and again just get as much gas out there as quickly as possible, and that increased the carrier speed. So then they had to go with a heavier barrel for a while. They use a big heavy tungsten buffer and a heavier spring, and that just bumped up the weight of the rifle. So basically, your stock HK 416 10.4, I believe, weighs roughly 1.5 pounds more than equivalently sized Mark 1 Mod 2, I think, something like that. HK, he was fully he fully stated the fact that HK now has one of the most efficient gas piston designs. They've got things dialed back tremendously. They're down to like a 1/16 of an inch gas port, or smaller now, very small. But they've made more enhancements. They've got a vented gas block. They've got an adjustable gas block in some cases now, but they've dialed in their system. They're still using, and they've dialed down the weight of the barrels a lot as well. That was kind of only for the first couple of years of those 10.4s, but they've got their system a lot more tuned now. But they took a different approach, and what PWS did from day one was they paid attention to that dwell time. So they've got a cool cutaway video, and they show inside the gas block where they milled out an extra kind of like space in that chamber that allows it, even though this is, again, there's no dwell time traditionally, there's not much space in the barrel where the bullet passes, but because they increased that volume inside the gas block, they've allowed more gas to get in there, and they've still increased that ultimate volume behind the bullet once it passes the gas block, and that allows a more clean cycling. They've also done graduated bleed off ports for the carrier. As the piston moves back, there's progressive bleed off valves that bleed off excess pressure, and that's good. It keeps the gun running cleaner, and it moderates that whole cycle that much more. And they've really worked within the characteristics of almost a DI platform, and they've kept the gun functioning a lot more true to those roots. So they haven't had to go back in and then re-engineer other aspects of the guns to cope with that. One other interesting aspect actually that he mentioned on the 416s, and this is actually readily evident, and you can still see this today, which is cool, is because they went with their system employed, one side effect of the system is you have a faster carrier speed, and that had a tendency to swing back and over time break these buffer retainer pins. So look at the size of that chonky buffer detent back there. That pin is huge, massive compared to typically a mil-spec AR buffer pin, right? So I'm just gonna pop out the PWS by contrast. And I realized this one doesn't have one. The previous owner of this lower is actually sending me, when I assembled this gun, the lower came from Eastern Canada, the upper came from Western Canada, but it's here now, and it's happy. But here, let's bring this Knights into the game here. We've got, now we've got short stroke, long stroke, and DI. So we're well represented here in the gas operating systems. And this is also where the SOP mod stock came from, which is why it went back. But look at that little guy. So there's your typical buffer detent, and much smaller. So again, that was just another cool little aspect of how HK re-engineered their gun to work despite that initial issue. So it's just kind of cool how that stuff plays out, and how all these little geeky nerdy details come to fruition. I love understanding the engineering behind these things. It's really fascinating. And with that, guys, that pretty much covers off the gun. So we are going to, again, tomorrow's the shooting videos. Apologize if you were getting into this thing expecting some shooting. I don't really shoot in these overview videos. These videos are about the gun and the companies and the features of the thing. I suppose I need to take you inside, though. So I should take you inside yet before we call this a day. And again, my buffer is going to fly out of me here. But I just have to show you the way this carrier works. It's really cool. And then we'll talk a little bit about the company. There we go. So that's out. Okay, so check this thing out. So we got a spring assisted bolt, which is pretty cool. Again, given it's a piston operator, you don't need those gas rings. That's pretty cool. It's a little bit dirty. And the charging handle, these new designs, the piston comes right off. And that's it. Like this is an AK, kind of. I mean, obviously it's not an AK, but it's pretty cool. And this little piston head just pops right off, so you can still get your charging handle out, all fine and dandy. And that's the little piston that makes it all work. So really cool. Again, that's a separate component that's still, actually this is another cool thing inside this thing here. This is all S7, I think, tools steel, I believe. And yeah, because this piston is so hard, you can't stake it. If you hit it hard enough to stake it, you would shatter it. It's that hard that it's therefore brittle. So what they do instead is they mill this slot, and you see those holes in there, those screws in there. That slot is so that you can stake the screws into the slot, into the carrier piece. That's hilarious, because yeah, literally this tool steel is too hard. They also do a lot of lightning cuts in here, and what they're trying to do there is they're trying to reduce the contact points of the carrier inside the receiver. Less contact points means there's more room for grit and grind to build up without impacting the function. Just a lot of really cool things, and it's a lighter contact surface. It runs that much more slick too. And I believe this probably has their life coating. They do the same life coating inside wherever there's moving contact points inside the gas block, and actually inside the barrel as well. And what this is different from typical nitriding or melaniting is that those result in, on a microscopic layer, the salt crystallizes and you get these spikes, right? Oh, that's how, like, the very microscopic surface treatment of these things, it's all spiky. And that's why barrels require this break-in procedure where you shoot and then clean and then shoot and then clean and then shoot. And it's because you're filing down those spikes. I guess this life procedure that they use, it results in much smoother finish off the bat, which is why apparently they say, like, these barrels don't need break-in. You shoot them 5 times, clean it, and then it's as good of accuracy as it'll ever have. But I want to kind of close off this video by talking a little bit more about PWS itself, a couple interesting notes of its history, and some of the origins behind the names, I guess the symbology behind their logo, which is kind of cool. Actually, I'll just say that right now. So this is the symbol for an old cartography, old map drawings. That's the symbol of a cannon, like the 2 wheels and the big gun in the middle. So that's one reason. The other reason that Dean mentioned that he thought it was cool is that there was an old alchemy symbol for iron. So also, I guess those were, between those two things, he thought it was a cool symbol and decided to go with it. And the name Primary Weapon Systems, originally they were AK Concepts. This original company was born out of Dean's garage. It was called AK Concepts, and they brought in, I think it was Yugo underfolder kits, and they got them built up. And I guess originally one of their first products was making an improved kind of slant brake for those things to compensate for, you're shooting an AK and it wants to walk at one side. Great, like they originally started building that. And that proved popular, so they built a version for an AR, and then they, eventually they just came to start incorporating this long stroke piston system inside the AR. The rest was history. Actually, you know what? After all that, I probably don't even need to do a disassembly video on this thing, but I probably still will really quickly, just to pull this all apart and take a closer look maybe at this bolt, which actually is it's a nickel Teflon coated surface. And apparently, again, the story behind that was Dean was out shooting a 416. They put like 1,000 rounds through it, pulled it apart, took the bolt out, wiped it off with a cloth, and it just was wiped clean. And he's like, we got to do that to ours. So they went back, they figured out how to do it themselves, and they did it. So again, very cool. It's cool that they've taken as many nods from the old German geniuses as they could, and built just a stellar system overall. This thing is just, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. If you can tell already, I'm a pretty big fan of this thing. So I guess you could almost call this overview a review at this point, though I would really like to get some more uppers from these guys in different lengths and play around with more stuff. Curious how this, I've actually got a few 14.5 guns. I've got the 14.5 Knights, the 14.5 HK. I've got 14.7 LVOA. I would just love this in the 14.5-ish length, and just directly be able to compare all of them together. I think that'd be really cool. Like I said, 11.5s I also have a few different guns in, so it'd be cool to just play with this in a few different calibers. But man, just attention to detail, everything that can be cut out is cut out. I'm just very cool. So PWS, they do invest a lot of time in their manufacturing processes, so they can give you more efficiency and more value for your dollar. Really interesting aspect that I talked to Brittany about is that they run their business kind of in a cycle, and they do it based on what they perceive as to be high sales years, which generally coincides with election years in the United States. So they kind of, in anticipation of an election year and high sales, they spend a bunch of time doing R&D and refining the processes. So they get their stuff worked out real solid, they everything nice and efficient, dialed in, and then when it's time for big sales, they're just ready to rock with all their standard models. And that's pretty smart, actually. It's a good practical and strategic way of looking at things. And they mentioned also that they do a lot of R&D work, they do a lot of tweaking, because typically they say from concept to store shelf, it's about 2 years of testing and working with something before they feel it's confident and ready to go out. A couple of other fun facts with PWS is they do not 99% of stuff in-house, but pretty close, because obviously they get in aftermarket grips, stocks, I think charging handles, some other small components, but largely they make everything in-house, and that's pretty respectable. And at one point, back in 2015, 2016, they launched Bootleg as a separate company, and that was designed around the DI platform. They had the suppressor-ready bolt carrier group. They had their cool, same design, the same uppers, and Bootleg has since been sold off. I had a buddy that was telling me that Bootleg made PWS's receivers and stuff, and it's the other way around. PWS makes and licenses out this design. This is the PWS design, and theirs alone, and that's pretty cool. So all the power to these guys. Definitely curious to try more, and stay tuned tomorrow for that shooting video. If you guys are still here watching, thank you a ton. I appreciate your time and attention. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the things. They do really help spread the word. I'm so pumped. It passed 50,000 subscribers today. It's been like 8 months now that I've been doing this thing, and I'm loving it. Been some growing pains, but honestly, it's been a ton of fun, and I'm constantly focused on improvement and consistency and quality. So we're gonna keep going there and keep upgrading the studio, upgrading the shooting facilities that we're gonna be having soon. Pretty cool about that. Haven't talked about that yet, so that's the first time I'm mentioning that. But yeah, we're getting some shooting facility upgrades and just more and more good stuff to come. If you really want to support the channel or talk shop with me, please hit me up on Patreon. I make myself available typically Sundays on there on that platform. If you guys want to reach out and ask some questions. If you guys are supporting members, I do definitely try and give back by making myself available just to chat, talk shop, answer questions, talk builds, whatever kind of things you want to do. Typically Sundays. So jump on there, throw me a question, and I'll hit you back. Thanks a ton, guys. Arm and Gun, out.